Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Momentum Mondays. I'm excited. It's another beautiful Monday morning, and I am pumped up to bring to the line someone who's a phenomenal woman, known as a professional coach, role model, mentor, leader, national speaker, vice president of human resources in corporate America, and many others. But she says her most important titles are wife and mom. She has helped me and hundreds of women across the country become better and stronger. She is the host and the visionary of this call and the author of Maximize Her Daily. I'm pumped up to welcome to the line Miss Jill Jordan Green. Good morning.
Good morning, Lynette. How are you this morning?
On fire and ready to go. Let's do it.
Let's go, folks. I want to say good morning, and good morning. Welcome to Momentum Mondays. My name is Jill Green, and I'm born in 2016, and I'm the host of the call that's designed to wake you up, shake you up, and take you up to new levels in your life, your career, your business, and your dreams. You were listening to the amazing song of Pressure by Jonathan McReynolds. We listened to him to get us started this morning, and before we get the call kicked off, I'd like to introduce to you a few of my amazing co-hosts. First up, we have the Bishop Dickie Robbins. He is pastor of the Life in Christ Cathedral Faith Ministries, all the way from Chester, Pennsylvania, author of the brand new devotional Wisdom of the Word, Your 90-Day Journey. Give it up for Bishop Dickie Robbins. Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning, Jill Green, and Momentum Monday, movers and shakers. Let's do this.
Let's do it. And next up on the line, we have Miss Michelle Washington. She's the founder and the visionary of the Women of More campaign, author of brand new Women of More magazine, all the way from Newark, Delaware. Good morning, Michelle.
Woo! Good morning, Jill Green and the Momentum Monday followers. I am intentional every single day. I wake up like this. Woo!
Yes, you do. And next up on the line, we have Dr. Dawn Roseman. She's really not a doctor, but we call her that. She's a partner in a major law firm, a writer, a keynote speaker, and author of brand new book, Boss Presence, Amazon's How to Sell It, all the way from my hometown, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Good morning, Dawn.
Hey, what's up, Jill? What's up, Momentum Monday listeners? Hey, guess what? It's sunny, but it's raining where I am. It's raining where you are, too. Let's go.
Let's go. And you already heard her amazing voice. She rides with me on this call every single Monday, all the way from Detroit, Michigan. She's the owner of Virtually Yours, founder of Saving Our Youth, author of the #1 best-selling book, Mission Unstoppable, that she penned with Les Brown and George Fraser. Give it up for my girl, Lynette Rogers. Good morning, Lynette.
Good morning, Jill. Good morning to all the champions on the line. I am killing procrastination in 2016 because the future is now. Let's take off.
Let's go. And I want to say thanks to all of you who join this call every single Monday to make sure that your Mondays will never be the same. If you want to dialogue with us, go ahead and join our Momentum Monday Facebook group and make your comments or ask your questions. If you like a quote, hashtag it. And guess what? Last week's call was off the chain. And it literally was life-changing. Go to our discussion group. The recording has been posted. And next up, folks, I want to introduce to you this amazing, phenomenal woman. She's the founder of Girls Rock. She's a community leader, a youth advocate, an international speaker from my hometown. Good morning, Anita Washington.
Good morning, Momentum Monday MVP players. Remember, leave with love today because someone you encounter may need it. Let's go.
Let's go. Danita, I'm super excited about our call today. As everyone knows, this is Mental Health Month, and Danita has led us every single Monday in a powerful discussion around mental health. And this call is especially important to me because this is a conversation that our country is having. Depression and suicide is on the rise, but especially in the African-American communities. So we're talking about it. Here at Momentum Monday, we tackle the tough conversations. Listen, life has been getting hard, and mental health is not about the person in the next block. It's about the person sometimes right in your living room. Last week, however, our conversation turned to the boys and the men in our communities and how they deal with mental depression or mental health or how they don't express their emotions. So I'm super excited, Danita, about today's call. Take it away.
Absolutely. I am too, Jill, and thank you for the opportunity. I want to go right in. I want to introduce our guest speakers today. We have none other than my pastor, Anthony Payton, pastor teacher of Come As You Are Community Church in Fort Wayne. He's not just a pastor teacher. He is now a shoe line owner. He is an author. He is a international speaker. So I just want to say thank you and welcome to the call, Pastor Payton. All right, maybe we lost him for a second. Secondly, we do have Bernard Hollins on the line. Bernard is the CEO of Always 100 Sports. He is an author as well, motivational speaker, and he has his own clothing line. He is a former professional basketball player and a surrogate dad to many in our community. Bernard, are you on the line? Welcome to the call.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. I'm so excited for Momentum Mondays, and I'm happy to be here amongst so many inspirational people today.
Awesome, and we're glad to have you. Pastor Payton, are you back on the line? Did we lose Pastor Payton? Okay, we're going to move forward, and I'm sure he'll get back on the line with us. I'm going to start with Bishop Dickey. Bishop, talk to us about this piece on depression and how sometimes young people, you use the words identity crisis and gender conflicted. How does that happen with our young man and the masking of depression and stress?
Well, everybody knows, Benita, that in the African American community there is a fatherhood factor because fathers are oftentimes absent from the home. And sometimes you hear mothers say things like, I'm mother and father to that child. And what they're saying is, I have to kind of fulfill both roles, when actually mothers are not equipped to be fathers, which is why God decided to put both in the home. A mother may do the best she can, even working two jobs, but affirmation and validation comes from the father. And absent that validation and affirmation, both boys and girls will grow up with a void in their lives and oftentimes with identity issues. And unless there is someone who steps into that role, whether it's an uncle, an older brother, or a male mentor, then especially boys, they will have issues in terms of how to function as up-and-coming men within the community. And that is an emotional issue at best, and sometimes it leads actually to mental health issues.
Wow. I mentioned last night was, I think you said something like another men instruct, women train, or opposite. Give me some insight on that. I thought that was a powerful piece that you spoke on.
Yeah, when it comes to raising boys into men, mothers can instruct, but it's fathers who have to train, because you teach by precept and example, and something very simple like going to the bathroom. A mother is not equipped to teach a boy how to do so in a fashion that men typically do. And she can tell that young man how to do it, but she can't show him. And there's so many life lessons that the fathers have to show, have to demonstrate. Even when it comes to girls, the father is supposed to be the first man that they have this emotional attachment to. And oftentimes when that's not there, a girl continues to yearn for that and search for that, and oftentimes will get involved in romantic relationship with older men because she's still searching for that validation that comes from a father.
Wow. So what I hear you saying is that a lot of times women, and it's not intentional, but this is one of the things that I've talked about even in Growth Rock, it's not intentional that we don't mess up the teaching, but sometimes can interrupt the flow of God's plan for our boys, just because sometimes we love too much and we take on a role that is not a God design. And so a lot of times for the moms that are on the call that are single, that are raising their boys, because that's a big part of our audience, Bishop and Nard, they're always asking, they're hungry to teach and be what they can for their boys when there is an absent father. And so thanks, Bishop, for that insight. Nard, I'm going to come to you because I know that you are a surrogate dad to so many through all well. But for the boys, what are some of the biggest struggles that you are seeing with the boys, the boys that you deal with in Always 100?
I think a lot of them are looking for role models when they're coming in our gym. I think the most important thing, understanding you care for them and you trust them and believe in some of the things they're trying to do. Many times that you go to a basketball game or a football game, sometimes you just see the mom there, and it's kind of like and if you're there as a role model, as a mentor, as someone they can look up to, I think they feel a little bit more confident about their pursuit, not just in basketball or football, but their pursuit in life. And I think that's so valuable these days, of having someone in your corner, such as myself and our programs we're doing, is trying to, make it around to every game, to every match, and let them know, hey, your father may not be here, but I'm here, and I'm someone you can count on and depend on. Because basketball is so much bigger than basketball. It's life, and that's why I try to let all our kids know this is a journey, and this is not. It's not a track meet. You're gonna be. It's a marathon. And you're gonna be. I'm gonna be here for life, and I'm someone you can depend on, as myself and my staff. So I think that's so important now with our young men, knowing, hey, you know what? I got someone I can depend on. I can count on through this journey.
Wow, and that's so true. That's one of the things that I like about Always 100 Camp is that you guys do look at the total child. And so when I turn kids to Always 100, that's one of the things I assure parents. I say, hey, he is not a person that's just going to look at him from the athletics. If he scores 50 points or 2 points, his mission, his goal is that life after basketball, or if it ends tomorrow, they still gained a mentor and a friend. Pastor Peyton, are you back with us?
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still here.
Awesome. One of the things I wanted to come to you on is what role, or do you think a young person into a man? And the second part to that question is the 5 things that you believe young men need and why.
Okay, I didn't quite hear the first part of the question, Danita. You were breaking up, but I think you said something about what I think it takes for a young man to transition into manhood.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that could take the rest of the day. I think that there are essential qualities. I mean, let's just back away from this for a moment and come at it this way. Statistically, within the African American context, 44% of the fathers are not connected to their children in general. They're not connected to their children, and 44%, 21% white, 35% Hispanic. We are the highest group of men who are not connected to our children, not living with them. Many of us can say, well, even if they're there, they're not there. So that's a whole nother thing. So the modeling piece of what it takes in order for a boy to transition to manhood is missing by example. We grew up in, let's just look at it from this. In that agricultural and industrial age, a father worked alongside his son. He may have been instrumental in his son working in the industrial age, even getting into the company. And he followed or worked alongside of his dad in that company. As time has progressed and fathers are no longer connected to their son, there is no direct mentoring there. There's no direct example there. So it becomes a responsibility of the entire community in order of men to be that example. And programs like Mr. Hollins have and others are very successful in that. The first thing that I think that every son needs to see unequivocally from his father and to understand manhood in general is that he needs to know that he loves his mother. I think that is the number one ingredient that every son needs to see from his father, that father loves his mother. And even though things may not have turned out successfully, But there ought to still be a level of respect there. There ought to be still a level of mutual conversation between the ex that tells that son, you know what, women are due respect. And I think that's the number one thing that is needed in that context. I think secondly, that there is a need for him to see his father fail. He needs to understand how to handle failure. We always promote the success, but how does a young man handle life when things don't go their way? Last year, I took a group of young men to Brazil. None of them, two of them didn't know their dad, and one knew him but didn't have the relationship that he should have had with him. And I watched those three young men evolve. I mean, I watched the light come on in their eyes just to get out of the country and be around other men. And when they came back, I think you were there, Danita, and they shared on the stage and wept in front of all those people in church and shared and apologized to their mom for some of the things that they've said and not being appreciative of the things that they have sacrificed and do. It was life-changing for them. So they need to see that. I think the third thing that there needs to be, he needs to see his dad become a servant leadership. Not everything is based upon money. He needs to see him volunteer. He needs to see him shoulder the responsibility of the community, the neighbor next door, et cetera. I've lived by this motto that leadership is determined, the depth of your leadership is defined by your ability to bear pain. If you can bear only your own pain, your leadership with that. So I think he needs to see that sacrifice. I think he needs to he needs him there. I mean, he needs him in his life, even if, coming from work and tired, he needs to be present. When he's asking questions, he needs to be present. He needs to go the extra mile to be at the games and everything, other activities that is in that son's life. And lastly, but certainly not least, he needs to know that his father loves him regardless of the mistakes he makes. One of the things that my relationship with my son, and he's made some mistakes, like his daddy made mistakes. But for me, I didn't have my father there in my life to say, okay, you were wrong, but I still love you. And so I make it a point, I make it a priority to make sure that even though Zach has made some mistakes, the reality of it, he still bears my name, and he's still my son, and I'm going to love him regardless. So those are the things that I think is essential.
Awesome. We are listening to the Momentum Monday show, discussing mental health and young men in our communities. And Pastor Peyton, we appreciate these 5 things that you had listed. Dad loves my mom, sees father fail. I think that is critical. I've never heard that before. And how does he handle it? The servant leadership, that dad needs to be seen serving and volunteering. What was number 4, Pastor Peyton? I missed that one.
Okay, you're going to make me go back to my notes here.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm going to do number 5 while you look. And he said, in working with
he needs to be present. He needs to be present. He needs awesome. To be in his son's life, yes.
Awesome, because that's something I think a lot of dads, and Bishop, you can help me with this one, that sometimes dads are there, but they're not always present emotionally. What do you think, Bishop, on that one?
Well, I was a boy who grew up without his father. I saw my father one time when I was 4 years old, and for the rest of my life he was absent. And one of the things that does, it begins to cause the child to question what's wrong with me if even my daddy doesn't want me. And so those kinds of questions that a child has no answer for will cause him to be conflicted over his self-worth, self-value, self-image. And so, as I stated earlier, validation and affirmation comes from the father. Initially, as a child is growing up and developing a sense of self-worth and self-esteem, the input of a father is critical. A mother will nurture and love unconditionally that child, but she can't bring the level of affirmation that a father brings. I want to give you the analogy that if you're baking a cake and a cake calls for eggs, there is no substitute for the eggs. If you want that cake to turn out the way it's supposed to, you have to bring the element in. Now, you may not have the fresh egg there, but if you have some egg beaters, sometimes that's the best that you have. A mentor is sometimes the egg beater that substitutes for the egg. So mentoring inside of the African American community is a critical component and can offset some of the maladies that are brought on by the absence of the father. A father will not gain. A son will not gain the sense of manhood and what it means to be a man by osmosis. He has to observe a father's interaction with the mother and what happens in the community now. Because mom still needs what mom needs. She's not getting it from dad, so she may have a revolving door of men coming in and out of the house, and the child sees that, doesn't understand it, but sees it, and somehow will translate that into an ingredient for his own life. It's okay to be transient as a father. And sometimes, lastly, the violence that we see in our community by these young men is their quest to prove something about manhood that cannot be proved through violence and with a gun. And so those are the kind of issues that emerge when fathers are missing.
Hey, Danita.
Wow.
Hey, Danita, this is Jill, and this is so awesome. Thank you so much for bringing this call to us. Last week we talked about the lack of emotional role models, and I love that we're talking about this. So I would love you to engage our male panelists today and get them to talk a little bit about the fact that Bishop mentioned the violence and the behavior. Sometimes our boys don't know how to show that they can cry. They don't know how to express themselves. So, it results in some type of internal explosion. And sometimes there's a mental health issue going on. Sometimes there's sadness or depression. So can you get them to talk a little bit about that? I think that's powerful. We had a lot of moms on the line who are raising young men.
Sure. Nard was going to touch on, Nard, I was coming your way. I'd like to ask you, what isn't in Always 100 when you see certain behavior patterns with young men and their behavior, their emotions? A lot of times they're angry and you don't always know why. Mom is trying to deal with it, trying to put them in athletics and different things to figure some stuff out. But what are some things that you and your staff do in order to, kind of get boys to see themselves in a different light, despite what they're coming from? And how do you help moms?
I think the biggest thing is pulling them to the side, because it's in the game of basketball. I always, translate basketball to life, and sometimes you can handle young men's situations in front of their mom, but sometimes they have issues that they might be going through that they just want to talk to you one-on-one. And I think that's so viable for our staff and I just to kind of understand that, hey, let's pull this kid aside. Let's see what they're going through. Let's get to the root of the problem and break everything down, and let's figure out how can we change this thing. And that's one of the things I have learned. My nephew, he dealt with mental health, and he committed suicide 2 years ago. And one of the issues he went through, and it kind of correlates with athletics, is that he was a big-time high school athlete, and he went to college, and he went through some injuries, and he got hurt, and he lost his position, and he just didn't feel that he lived up to the standard that African Americans and our youth. It's a huge issue today, and at that time, I didn't understand how big depression was. And here, my own nephew was looking at himself in the mirror like he's a failure in life, and it's just a temporary problem, and you don't want to end it with a final solution. And I didn't know that at the time, that honestly, all the depression he was going through, that here I am, running an Always 100 program and not really having a grasp on this mental health issue that even my nephew had and some of the other young men have. And it's times and needs that I think as African young men have to be pulled aside and channeling them, talking to them one-on-one, and let them understand this is life. It's bigger than basketball, and kind of letting the mother know that, hey, you have someone that you can depend on, that you can talk to, and just trying to get them to understand that, because so many times in our athletic playing field that they they think, hey, if you don't make it in basketball, you're a failure at life. If you don't make it in football, and it's so much bigger than that. And a lot of the mental health issue is tied into athletics, which it shouldn't be that way. And that's what some of the parents that come talk to me, they're all, you know, they're saying, hey, they're losing relationship with their kid of the success they're having on the playing court, which is just a total distraction of their main goal and purpose in life.
Wow. One of the things you posted recently, and I loved it, you said that when I see a mom who argues with a coach, most colleges aren't even going to fool with them, because at that point you've already shown that you become a conflict, not just for the athletic but for the child. And so one of the things that I have learned with my boys being 24 and 28, we kind of talked about this on our pre-call, is that there is a role that sometimes mom needs to play when they get to certain levels. And it's more of the backseat role of empowering them through the talks, through the loves, in order to prepare them, you know, to go out in the world. And I think, Bishop, I'd like you to kind of talk on this because some of our kids are not going to be athletes. Let's be clear here. And I had a nephew who was he can sing, he can dance. And I remember when he was in school, it was almost frowned upon because he was not a basketball player. He's really into fashion, and it was almost labeled him as gay because he wasn't the burly big guy. So, Bishop, kind of talk to us about those young men and how we navigate them through this life journey if they are not, the athlete.
Well, first of all, we have to give as much credibility and assign as much value to other expressions, such as artistic expressions, and we should not minimize the importance of those other activities, because just because a person has the physical attributes for athletics does not mean they have the mental capacity or the interest in those activities. And somebody needs to tell them that it's okay to not be an athlete. And unfortunately, that someone needs to be a male figure, ideally the father, because if affirmation and validation comes from the father, then the father has to affirm to that son that it's okay if you want to dance, it's okay if you want to act and be a dramatic role in a play. Somebody has to affirm that there's nothing wrong with you if you don't have the interest or you're not predisposed to get involved in athletics. And unfortunately, society has defined male roles and female roles in a way that is counterproductive. And sometimes people feel pressured into and pigeonholed into a place where they don't fit. And that is, in and of itself, causing a conflict. And because they sometimes have the physical attributes but not the talent to pursue sports, and they don't do well, they begin to think something's wrong with me. And so the emotional upheaval and sometimes mental strain of trying to meet somebody's expectation who is misguided themselves about the value of the child who's not interested in what I think they should be interested in. And sometimes moms flow into that expectation because sometimes she sees that child's athletic prowess as a ticket out of the hood and the only seat on the train that's headed towards success. If you're big enough to play basketball, you become good at that, then you may get a scholarship and go on to college. And so the child is fighting a losing battle because they have no affirmation from the father and they have an unreasonable expectation from mom and the rest of society.
Wow. So moms on the call, especially single moms and even dad and family members, we have got to, it sounds like, do a better part. That basketball cannot be the ticket. That a lot of our students and our young men have other gifts and talents. And one of my mentors shared with me when my boys were in school, I told this on the call last night, that, one of my boys was really athletic, really good, and the other one, he was okay, he was mediocre. And I appreciated the fact that somebody said he can really sing, he can dance, we'd love to have him in show choir. So we did show choir. Well, I had a male teacher that I felt like it was an insult to him and said that because my son that was really good ended up joining the choir as well. And we were traveling to Florida to perform at Walt Disney, and he had to miss a basketball game or something, and he was told that I can't believe you're going to miss a game to go dance across the stage in Disney World. And I was telling the callers at that time I wasn't quite saved and delivered, and so the mommy instinct in me really went off, and I could not believe that a male leader would say such a thing to a student, because it had my son questioning himself. And so I want to make sure that as mentors, leaders, as teachers, educators, anybody that is playing a role in working with young people, that we do not begin to speak death into children, into their gifts, and into their dreams, that we speak life into what they're doing, and that we don't pimp them as family members to do the things that we didn't get to do. And so as moms and as dads and aunts and uncles, a lot of times we're at these games and we're at events and we hear them screaming and yelling and going off on people. But I think the one thing that we want to do is learn to, again, as I tell people, lead with love with our young people, and allow them to pick and choose what gifts they want to share and put out into the world and the atmosphere. This has been an amazing, amazing conversation. I'd like to transition into the after call, but I do want to give each speaker one last thing if they'd like to share anything on this part of the call, a tool or a takeaway that you maybe want someone to take. Pastor Peyton?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking about Jill's question that we talk about the emotional side of that, and I was thinking about my own context. You know, growing up, my issue was never intellectual. My issue was emotional. The emotional scars that I had as a result of my dad not being in my life, and even a stepfather that didn't want me around, was the reason, or became the decision maker for a lot of the things that I ended up doing. And it wasn't until I was coming out of that dark night of my soul that I realized how much that vacuum of my father not being there played into that decision. It made me look for ways to post up as a man. So I became hard. I did not cry. I did not trust anybody, and male or female. And I think that we have to deal with that aspect of our young men in general, African American young boys specifically, that are growing up, and they're searching for exterior ways and external ways to transition into manhood. And as a result of that, they're emotionally frozen. You look at some of the things that they do to one another, you know, or in some of the things I heard countless things that young boys have said to their mom, and at a certain age, their moms become just another female. We have to deal with that in emotional life and resolve and help them understand that just because I cry or feel does not make me less of a man. Understanding those emotions and where I am makes me more of a man. And I'm going to say this, and then I'm done. When I was coming out and I started to read and understand and got into Park Center, there's one quote that was a powerful part of my transformation, and it was a speech by Du Bois in 1948, and I'll just cut to the heart of it. He says, "Gentlemen are bred, not born. They receive manners from those that surround them and not their blood. Manners maketh man and are the essence of good breeding. It has to do with forms of salutation between civilized persons with the care, the cleanliness, and grooming of the body. They know that dirt is matter misplaced, and they seek to replace it. The elementary rules of good health are second nature to them, and their inbred courtesy, one toward the other, makes life livable even among crowds." That is what has to take place. We have to see ourselves engaging these young men because they're growing up in that vacuum, and it takes all hands on deck to turn this ship around, and it begins by understanding the emotional disposition and pain and scars that they're currently living with because of this enormous number of men that are not connected with their children.
Awesome. All hands on deck. That's a hashtag, everybody. Lard?
That's really good. I think overall, if I can help a young lady out or a parent or a mother, I think support your kid for who he is and just back him up. Every kid is not going to be a professional athlete, a doctor, lawyer, whatever it might be, but support their vision and push them to be their backbone and don't don't break away from, since your kid, since he's not, like you said, he's not 6'8" and 240 pounds. So just support them and back them and be there for them. And if you have someone, if you have a program that and you have strong mentors and just believe in their system and because there's so many times that I have I don't say a disagreement with parents, but sometimes I'm not trying to take the kid away, but I'm just trying to provide, like Pastor Payton said, a fatherhood for a kid that can really help him and pursue his goals and dreams. So just support your kid, be there for him, regardless of if this is basketball, football, soccer, or whatever it might be, and be very inspirational and moving them in the right direction.
Awesome. Hashtag support your kids for who he is. I love it. Bishop Dickey?
Yeah, one encouragement I would have for the moms out there, because moms do so much and give so much of themselves to try to make sure that their sons have the best opportunities to see. But sometimes inadvertently, moms forget that this boy is my son, he's not my man. And mothers sometimes demand an emotional support from the son, or they create expectations that the son steps into a role that he was not developed for. Because the father left you and created a void, you cannot get what you need from that son. And then the other side of the coin is, because you resent what the father did to you, emotionally you make the son pay the tax on that, perhaps because he resembles his father. And sometimes we have mothers say, you're just like your dad, or whatever that those words happen to be. And so if you have younger children, don't make the son be a parent figure for those children, because he may have the size and the age to be there, but does he have the emotional stability and strength to fill that role? So mothers with good intentions sometimes demand from their sons something that they're not built to offer, and the child is always chasing a shadow and feeling like a failure because he cannot meet mom's expectations. And you can see by the pictures on your television on Sunday, when these sons value mom, they always say, they give credit to mom and I love you, mom. Dad's not mentioned, and that's often because he wasn't there. So sons don't want to discipline their mothers. And sometimes mothers create impossible standards or expectations for those sons and build failure into that relationship by doing so.
Wow. Hashtag my son is not my man. I love it. Jill, Dawn, Lynette, we're going to transition into the after call. So I will let Jill take that away. And let's go.
Absolutely, Danita. Thank you so much. Bishop, Pastor,
I think
Danita,
we got. There you go.
Yep. Okay, so Danita, thank you so much for an amazing call. Pastor Bishop Bernard, hopefully you can hang out with us for a few more minutes. Lynette, can you open up the lines if you haven't already? Folks, you're officially a part of the Momentum Monday after call. What that means is if you hit *6, it will unmute your line. Pastor Payton and Bernard, just stay like you are. You're already unmuted, so you can continue to participate. If you are a caller and would like to share or say something or ask a question, hit *6, and we will look and call on you so you can participate. And we said a lot today on this call. It's been amazing, and we understand that we are sharing from our perspective. So we understand that some of the points that we made don't apply to every single mother that we've spoken about or every single mom. We're speaking from our perspective, and actually, the pastors that we have on the line have counseled and met with a lot of people, so sometimes they speak from their perspective, and I'm sharing that because I'm getting inbox messages, and people are very passionate about this topic. So what I'd like to do, because it's such a broad topic, to our guests, Bernard, Mr. Hollins, and Pastor Peyton and Bishop, I want to go back to the emotional conversation because this is Mental Health Month, and I think some of the things that we're seeing in our boys, and I believe the athletic piece, Bernard, I love what you're doing, is a solution and a answer to help keep our boys on track and to keep them focused. But I think also what you are going to be addressing or are addressing is the emotional piece, right? They need also, like I was listening to Pastor Peyton's tips on what our boys need, right? The other thing they need that we talked about is, like Pastor Peyton says, they need to see men express themselves. They need to learn how to say I'm mad without, being violent. Not that all young men are, but I believe, based on the small research that I've done, that some of the mental health issues and some of the suicide that's rising in our African-American communities with our young men is because they have not seen how to express themselves. And we're just beginning to have this conversation, but Pastor Peyton, I'm going to throw it back to you. What do we do? Where do we go from here? We have young men, 15, 17, 18, killing themselves because they don't know how to say, I'm hurting. Pastor, what do we do?
Well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, and I think that the staggering aspect of that statement is that they're saying it within the context of a community that don't know how to say, I'm hurting. We, as an African American community, we don't deal with emotions appropriately. We hide how we feel. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, Jill, I've sat in my office and I asked the question, well, tell me how you're feeling. And they're giving me a litany of thought. They can't even identify emotional words in many instances. How you feel? Well, I think that I should have done it differently. I said, that's not what I asked you. Tell me how you feel. And then I have to pull out of my drawer a list of emotional words for them to begin to even understand what I'm asking. We don't traditionally go in and get counseling as African Americans. We don't deal with emotions traditionally like we should. We live under this umbrella of keeping family business, and subsequently things go on and that you don't talk about, you bury. And sooner or later, that pressure will burst and cause you to burst. So I think that we have to be honest. First of all, we have to be honest. Mom has to be honest. Dad has to be honest, whether he's in his son's life, about the, as I said a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, about their own chariot ride. One of the things I did with my son is my son Zachary was 6 years old, and I never had a relationship with my dad, but I felt compelled. I put him in the car, drove all the way to Mississippi, just him and I, knocked on the door of my dad, my biological father, and stood there and said to my son, this is your granddad. Look at him. Look at where he's at. Get a good picture of this, because you cannot turn out like this. And I was honest about that. My dad, my dad just dropped his head and said, "I'm sorry."
Wow.
We have to be honest with that chariot ride, that past that we have ourselves. Like I said, my problem was never intellectual. I was always interested in books and reading, etc. It wasn't until that day my dad said, "I'm coming to get you," and he didn't show up. And I stood in my grandmother's yard waiting for him to come, and she told me, "Tony, he's not coming. Come on the porch." And I stood there with tears in my eyes and said to myself, at 13, I am not crying over no one or nothing again. And it was over a decade before I ever shed a tear over anything.
Oh, Pastor, let me say something here.
Yes.
Woo, Pastor, let me say something. I'm in tears right now. We have folks on the line who want to share. We have people's sons on the line right now listening in. So, folks, we're going to take our time this morning. If you have to jump off and go back to work, we love your support. You'll be able to hear the recording. We'll post it as soon as we get finished. But this is very important. Pastor, I love what you're saying because I see you sitting on the porch. I see you sitting in the front yard waiting for your father who never showed up. And there's so many young men and women today who still are waiting for somebody to show up, and who still are emotionally suppressed, repressed, depressed, hopeless, which is how they end up with these mental health situations that we're talking about today. I want to say one thing, and I'm going to go to some callers who are waiting to hear from. I think it's important, Pastor and Bishop, I need you on this as well, that we have our kids name what they're feeling. Now, when my kids are experiencing something, like I told my daughter the other day, I said, what you're describing is rejection. I said, say rejection. Name it. Because then you know there's nothing wrong with you. It's a feeling that we have to deal with. But if you can't even name it, if you don't even know what it is, you feel hopeless.
Yes.
You feel hopeless. Pastor, you got me fired up this morning. All right, I have a caller, 260 that is unmuted. Go ahead and talk to us, caller. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question. We spoke about fathers being present. My son's father and I have not been together since he was probably under a year old. He's been active in his life since he was, regularly since he was 5. My son travels to him once a month. He lives in another state. We do holidays, vacations, spring break, summer, all that. His dad is active in that aspect. But my son is now going to be 12 next week, and we are battling because I now have a husband, and my son's father is now wanting to take one more of a role since I've had this husband. And I'm finding it to be more of a detriment to my son because it's becoming more of a competition for his father, to where my husband is he has no problem expressing his emotions. He is very open, and I've seen that's been a great advantage for my son in the last 3 years. And his father is more militant. You do what I say. Your feelings don't matter. If this is how, it's more about his feelings and how my son may make him feel, because now he wants him to come live with him. And it's more about his feelings and not what my son wants, or the activities that he wants him to be involved in because he didn't get to do them, or the career path that he feels he needs to go down, and he's only in the 6th grade, that kind of thing. How do I, as the mother, balance wanting him to have a relationship with his father, but seeing and, even hearing from my son, last week my son came to me and said, Mom, I'm sad. I'm depressed about this. I love my stepfather. I see that I love him. I, see myself becoming better because of him. But then I have my dad who is now trying to entice him with different things to come live there and move there and move with him, and trying to basically guilt him into different things, and even just coming into his own and being able to express his feelings to his father. Well, I'm an adult and I don't even like talking to him because it's always about him. It's not where he's able to give his view. So how do you balance that type of situation?
All right, so I'm going to ask the gentleman to address this. Pastor Peyton and Bishop, what are your thoughts on this caller's dilemma this morning?
Go ahead, Bishop. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I see 3 primary issues and a concern. Number one, there is the potential here for an emotional conflict, because you can have a son who loves his father but not like what his father is all about. And so there will be an internal battle just over how do I really feel about my father. And then he has this love for and appreciation for his stepfather, what he offers kind of goes against what the father is expecting. And so it's almost like this child is in the middle, and 2 forces are pulling against that child, and mom is either a bystander, a spectator, or she's going to have to put on a striped shirt and be the referee. Because what you have to understand is that a child should not have to choose where he or she would get love from. And it sounds to me almost like a custody battle starting to brew. And the custody is not so much for the child, but for the emotions of the child. And a father wants something, has an expectation, because I believe he sees a part of himself in the child and does not want to lose that, but see the child growing in another direction because of the influence of the stepfather. And so, Mom, you seem to recognize this, and I think it's pretty clear in your mind which of these influences you want to be primary in the child's life. And what I would do is say, listen to that child, because at 12, going on 13, that child has a clear understanding about what he wants, and the courts will listen to that. But what I'll say to you is, you may want to start now preparing for a battle, because it sounds like a battle is brewing, and the prize is going to be the emotional health of that son. And so that's why this battle cannot be compromised or surrendered. Listen to the child. What he's saying is, I need this in my life, but my father wants this, and you have to advocate for the child.
Okay. Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, caller.
Okay. Hello?
That's okay.
No,
go ahead.
Okay. I would add to that. I would say, let's just. I would tell that mother, just pause for a moment and think about this. Your son was able to identify, name how he felt. That's major for a 12-year-old young man. He could say how he felt. He named it. That's a positive. That tells me volumes about the environment that you are raising him in. I think, secondly, let's just celebrate that, and then secondly, deal with the issue at hand. I think that's a conversation that you, your current husband, and your ex have to sit down as adults and say, it's all about what's best for him, and that's it.
We did that last week, and when my son told me that last Thursday, myself and my husband, his father and his wife, we sat down. I told him, I said, we were having a conversation about something else. I said, before anything else is discussed, our son had something to discuss with us. And my son told him, and basically it went ignored. It totally went ignored. And my son's father went on to talk about how it made him feel that his son didn't want to come live with him and all this other stuff, not the fact that our son at 11, about to be 12, just told you that he was depressed and has been sad and crying over this situation.
Wow. Well, that says something about, where the emotional life of his father, and you just got to continue to protect and nourish your son in the way that you're doing it. I mean, and I agree with Bishop. Seems like, if things doesn't change, that this is leading to a legal situation. But I pray that it doesn't. I pray that I pray that it is resolved in a way that helps your son.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Bishop. And caller, thank you so much. I don't want to miss anybody else, so if there's somebody else on the line who wants to share, ask a question or make a comment, at this point you're free to speak up. Is there anybody else on the line this morning who would like to ask a question or share?
Hey, Jill, one thing before that caller just hangs up, there may be some consideration of getting that son into some counseling, because he is expressing depression and sadness, and I don't think that should be ignored. We don't know the depth of that at this point, so maybe a session with a counselor to assess how serious that depression is in order, because I would hate for something to happen to the child, because he has already said, here's how I'm feeling. Those feelings can't be ignored, and maybe professional intervention is necessary.
That's good, Bishop. Thank you for that. Thank you. This has been awesome. Danita, thank you so much for bringing these guests on the line and bringing this topic to us. It's been a very powerful topic for this month and specifically for today. Pastor Peyton, I'm just, still seeing you in the front yard waiting, on your father.
Hey, Jill?
Yeah.
Yes, Dawn.
Hey, just a thought. What Pastor Peyton said just made me. I didn't sit in a front yard, but I sat in the front of a patio door, waiting. My mom used to get me dressed, and my dad told me he was coming back. And every time I heard that gate open, I knew it was him, and it was never him. And I don't remember this distinctly, but she reminds me that there came a time when she was getting ready to get me dressed and do my hair because I made her do that, because my daddy was coming, right? And one day I told her, you don't have to do that no more because he ain't coming. That's when I was introduced to lying from the men in my life. And it shaped me in a way, when I talk about this RAIN platform, it's a transition. It marks a transition from that brokenness that happened back when I was 4 years old. And so I say all that to say, though, is that I look at this now, and I would love to leave this because I don't want to miss this, because especially with what NARD is doing and powerful figures, male figures like Pastor Peyton and here in our community and Bishop and his community, what I have seen in my own life is that, yes, my biological father chose not to have a relationship with me. And it impacted me greatly. But what God did in return was he put people in my life who have taken up and were glad to take up the mantle as my dad, walking around here and with people I could call and would show up. And even to this day, had someone, a wonderful mentor of mine, Pastor Tracy White, who told me yesterday, he receives me as his daughter. He goes, I didn't have you, but I might as well have, because I look at you and I see my daughter. And he treats me like that. And so I just encourage the people on the call who may be seeing a loss or a missing element, just to lean into those people that God is bringing across their path, to fill that, because it's not, none of this is catching God off guard, and I just would encourage them to look for those people because they're there, but it's incumbent upon us to open up our eyes and see them and receive them as such. And that gets blocked if we focus so much on what we are missing as opposed to how much we have in place. And so I just would hate I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. And thanks, Danita, for leading this discussion.
I agree with that 100% because, I think it's so critical that as adults we come to a place of acknowledging that pain, that vacuum that we receive as a result of dad not being there, and subsequently to that, healing so that we can be used by God to be change agents and healing instruments in the lives of others. I remember distinctly after I had made a decision that I wanted to change my life, and I was sitting I found myself again on the porch, but this time it was on my mother's steps actually, and I'm going down memory lane. I'm saying, why have I done all this stuff? Why did I become addicted to heroin and cocaine? Why would I spend time sleeping outdoors? Why did I drop out of school? And I'm telling you, just as sure as you are listening to me online, God took me back to that 13-year-old boy standing in that gate and making the decision that he wasn't going to cry anymore for no one or nothing. That was the genesis of all the mess that I got into. And that subsequently had to be dealt with in order for me to better myself on all spheres of my life. Now, the most challenging aspect of that was when I thought I was over it, and my father passed, and they called me and said he had passed. And I said, okay, why are you calling me? Why are you calling me? I got nothing for him. And my wife says to me, Tony, you need to go and you need to close the chapter on this. You need to go. I said, I ain't going. I ain't spending no money. I said, a tank of gas would cost me more than this man has financially invested in my life. Why should I go? Well, it's luckily I have the wife that I do. Blessing that I have the wife that I do. So she encouraged me to go. I went. Long story short, I went. I got there. They didn't have money to bury him. I had to pay for it. They didn't have money to buy a suit to put on his back. I had to pay for it. T-shirt I had to buy for him to be buried in. And then, believe it or not, they looked at me and said, well, you're a preacher. Why don't you preach it?
Come on, Faith.
Wow.
How do you stand up and preach a sermon over someone that you don't know like that as a father? It was the most challenging and difficult thing I have done in ministry. I'm on my way back, and it's just me. My wife didn't go. I'm on my way back, and I never forget. I see this sign that says birthplace of Abraham Lincoln, and it hit me. The Lord said, now you have been emancipated. Now you have been freed from the pain of what your daddy did not do.
Yeah.
I pulled over to the side of the road, and I had a good cry. I had a long cry. And I wept, as Scripture said, until I didn't have strength to weep anymore. And it was the most important part of my transition subsequently to accepting Christ into my life. I had to have that. I had to own it. And I think that as adults, we have a tendency to be so mad and say, oh, well, I'm just not going to think about that. I'm grown. I'm a professional now. I've achieved in spite of. But the reality of it is, it's still there.
Yeah, yeah.
Even now, with everything that's done, I wish he was here so I could hear him say, I'm proud of what you've become.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Even now. I have grabbed hands and prayed with the man that would become the first black president of the United States. And I would give that up quickly if I could have grabbed my father's hand and went into prayer.
Woo!
Even now.
Woo!
But we got to own that. We got to own those emotions. We got to own that and be healed, because we can never have a platform to become healing agents and changing people's life if we're still frozen by our own pain and scars and hurt for that dad not being there.
Jill, I'm jumping off the call because of the breakdown. I'm just going to jump off. I'm still here, and I fell out. So, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. This is so emotional this morning. Pastor, that was amazing. And people all over the country have been so blessed by the story that you just shared. And we could do another hour and still not be done with this. I'll say one more thing before I pass it to Danita, who's been an amazing leader of this series for us. Pastor, you mentioned when you made an inner vow that you would never cry again.
Mm-hmm.
And how that thing stuck with you. That is so powerful, because as young people, we make inner vows all the time, but no one knows about it. So there's this thing that's operating them and operating you and driving you, and no one even knows. And it's so powerful. There are people like you and Bishop and Mr. Hollins in their lives to help them with those inner vows. I know we can't unpack that this morning, but at some point in life, I would love for us to go back and talk about, the inner vows and how those things that we say to ourselves as children, Dawn, like you said, he ain't coming, right? Something happened inside of you that day. You made a statement to Pastor Mr. Hollins. Thank you so much, Danita. You want to go ahead and close us out this morning?
I do. I have been sitting. I tell people a lot of times leadership sits in the back row and listens and, assesses and takes in. And that's what I did this after call. And I'm telling you, God's hand is on this thing. And I knew it was when I started this journey of mental health with Connie Carrick in that Parkview about a year ago, because what I noticed is that so many people, we were doing Band-Aid work. We were talking about surface-level information and having programs, but then every year they will continue to come back still operating out of hurt habits and hang-ups. And so, I want to say that this was not an accident. It was definitely divine order. And the people on the call were not picked or selected, but they were chosen because I know God has something and some work for us to do beyond what we see. And so I want to say thank you to our guests, but more importantly, thank you to the courageous listeners on the call, that they become doers of the information, that all of us, including the guests, we all have kids and parents and young people that we're working with. And, I'm emotional because this has been a dream of mine that we began to not just have the conversation in local areas, but nationwide about how do we help young people. And so I'm at work, and I hope I keep my job because I was supposed to be in there at 8:30. But as I sit in my car just crying at the fact that God is doing what he said he would do. And so I just want you all to know that this was, like I said, no accident. It was divine. And so next week I'm praying that you all will join us for the call with the girls. And Bernard, I think, is going to be back. Pastor Peyton is going to be back. When we may have another guest, a student guest, that will unpackage for girls. So the one thing I want to close with is my hashtag, that everything we talked about stands on all of us learning to lead with love, that meet people where they are, and if we can learn to lead with love, we can be game changers and change agents for young people that are following us. Have an amazing Monday. And an awesome week.
Thank you.
All right, Danita. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing call.
Thank you.
Have a blessed day, everybody.